Thank you to everybody for coming along. My name's Terry Deans. I'm a punitively suspended Labour Party member. I'm in Plymouth Moor View constituency Labour Party, and I got suspended last year, 21st of September last year, as I said, punitively suspended. So I'm still in the party as a member. First of all, I'd just like to say this is going to be a series of, it's planned to be a series of workshops. So I'm not expecting everything to get done and dusted today. This is like our sort of toe in the water to see where we're going to go, what can be done, the feasibility, etc. So as I say, we don't need to get everything done by the end of today, but it'd be nice to get some sort of some forward motion. If you look at last week, any of you who were on the Not the Forward inquiry, Not the Forward inquiry last week, you'll have heard plenty of testimonies from people, and there's over 500 people and 1,200 people on Facebook stream watched that. And the predominating question which was coming back was, what are we going to do next? So the Shadow CLP idea was something that's been on the cards for a while.
Yeah, I'm from West Ham CLP, which is a very vibrant CLP alongside our neighbours East Ham CLP, and both CLPs, with a joint membership of over 5,000 members, were suspended on the 12th of March. We have always been a very active group since the election of Corbyn, when people flooded into the party. You know, we've been, during the general election, Faiza Shaheen was standing in a neighbouring constituency. And I mean, we'd regularly get 30, 40 people out to support her. We even supported people like John Cruddas over in Dagenham Way. But also we were involved in day-to-day activities and very rooted in our community. So we'd have regular street stalls with the Labour Party, active in the anti-academies fight back, the Newham Save Our NHS, etc., etc. So there was a core of about 30 or 40 of us who would be attending regularly, and we basically took the positions in both CLPs. And I think we were a real threat to the right. So I should explain very briefly that Newham Council is completely Labour. I don't know if it's had any other representatives from any other party for many a year. We also have a directly elected mayor, Roxana Fiaz, and there are some real terrible right-wingers in the local council. There are also some good lefts, but they're in a very small minority, and it's quite a difficult situation for left-wingers to work in, because you know, we were often put down by the council and put down by the right wing. But as I said, we controlled the positions, with the exception of West Ham CLP secretary. All other positions in West Ham and all of East Ham were taken by the left. So we were suspended, and they gave 3 very stupid and refutable reasons for suspension. And the real reason, we know, was that in West Ham we put forward a resolution in support of Corbyn, and for Starmer and for Evans, who we had no confidence in them. But also they were terrified that we would be powerful enough to be able to determine who the councillors were going to be in 2022 at the local council elections. So basically we were waiting for some action to be taken against us, and lo and behold, we got an email from the London Regional Director, Amy Fode, telling us that we were suspended. And it was a shock, but not a surprise, if you know what I mean. So we knew that there were a lot of people by this time who were very disenchanted with the Labour Party nationally, and that there were some very good people who were leaving. And yeah, I mean, and since the suspension, we've had even more people leaving. And we didn't want to lose those people and lose their energy and lose the impetus the fact that we're so rooted in the community, we didn't want to lose that. And so we decided, a group of us, a small group of us, admittedly, to set up like a weekly meeting, which has now become Newham Socialist Labour. So we have a weekly meeting. We have set out policy statements collectively on housing, education and health. We've got 2 chairs elected, joint chairs. We've got a minute taker, and we're going to look into finances and having a treasurer. We have carried on working within the community, and these are some of the things that we're doing. We're involved in 2 food banks, one of them which takes place this afternoon and regularly attracts about 400 people. So that's the depth of poverty in our area. It's very extreme. We run a uniform shop for school uniform, which really kicks off in July and then throughout August and into early September in preparation for the new school year. We've been on demonstrations to stop the Silvertown Tunnel, which is a tunnel which will have 8 lanes, 4 in each direction, going under the River Thames at the cost of several billion, well, billions of pounds, and a huge pollution to local people. So there was a march last Saturday that attracted about 250, 300 people. There's been a demonstration yesterday against the closure of an arts centre, and we think we forced the council to backtrack on that. And we've been involved in leafleting GP surgeries about the takeover by Centene and the privatisation of GP services. So since the 12th of March, we basically carried on doing what we were doing, where the Labour Party were trying to stop us doing that. As I said, people are disenchanted, people are leaving the Labour Party. Some of the people who were in the Labour Party and started out with us within Newham Socialist Labour have decided to leave the Labour Party, still come to Newham Socialist Labour. Now, I think that's a really crucial thing, because we have 1 or 2 people who've been suspended as individuals, but we've also got people who are very, very unhappy and don't see the Labour Party as the vehicle for the future and change. And so I think it's up to us, excuse me, as socialists, to make sure we don't lose that energy and lose that, you know, that huge optimism and hope that we had for change and a better future, and the fact that working people could actually be, you know, part of a massive change in society for the benefit of the ordinary person in the street. We don't want to lose that hope, and so that's why we've carried on. I think really the most important thing is, for me personally, is that I think I'm in 2 minds about whether the Labour Party is going to be the vehicle, you know, whether we can get back to a situation where the Labour Party is electable, and whether the Labour Party has got the policies and the programme and the will to make that change. And I'm very unsure of that. And so, I mean, I've come along today because I really want to hear those ideas of people. And I don't think it's enough to say to people, oh, it's going to change. The situation, the reality of life is going to change, and the Labour Party can be resurrected. I don't buy that. And I'm looking potentially that this, having a shadow CLP, or what we've called it, one of our members, Trish, one of our ward members, Trish, called it a ghost CLP. She said, because you can't kill us and we're coming back to haunt the buggers.
Yeah, I mean, the situation in North East Cambridgeshire couldn't be more different to the situation in Newham. It's a rural type of constituency. I mean, it's the breadbasket, part of the breadbasket of Britain, and we have a number of small towns. The total Labour Party membership at the last count was 278, which gives you an idea of how the party is seems to have degenerated. I only moved here 2 years ago, and for the first year or so, I wasn't able to take part because of personal situation. But as the purge gathered pace, I felt that, I mean, there's a slight left-wing majority in the CLP. I've got a couple of our other CLP members actually on this session, so I don't know if either of them will want to come in on more of the history of the CLP. But one of the branches in probably, I think, the largest of the towns has actually collapsed. But I saw that with the purge gathering pace, that I personally was likely to be vulnerable, and some of the other members were likely to be vulnerable. So basically, I set up a Facebook group. We've got 11 members in the group, and it's at the moment it's a bit of a talking shop, but we just sort of exchange ideas. We do need to get a bit more organised when it comes to the sort of questions of conference delegates and so on. But not long after we set up the group, I think it was 5 of us to start with. The offices in one of our neighbouring constituencies were suspended, and just recently the Peterborough, our biggest neighbouring town, has suffered a major purge. A fortnight before the local election, they suspended half of the Labour group for alleged anti-Semitism, the usual crap. So really, it's a case. It was, from my point of view, it was a precautionary measure, because I could see that if any of us were suspended, the important thing was to be able to keep contact. We're not really a shadow CLP as such yet. It may come to that. It may come to that.
Plymouth, Plymouth Moor View CLP, Plymouth Labour Group, and I touched on it earlier on about the things that I and others did at the very start, and we started things up in Plymouth. Broad left, etc., etc. I mean, the thing that I kind of keep going back to is momentum. I mean, in the early days, momentum was created for Labour members and non-Labour members to affect and to work together and support the Labour Party from within and out with the Labour Party. So back in those days, in the early days, before James Snyder and his crew and Landsman and everyone decided to change all that you're going to be a Labour Party member, we were very vibrant in Plymouth, mixing with and working with other socialists who were either in the Labour Party or were not in any party, or were in other organisations, and we would work closely with them. And the whole point of momentum, as I saw at that time, was to, in my view, the way I tried to operate, I was the early sort of founding chair of momentum in Plymouth, was to use that as a kind of a safe place for members to come. I mean, we all know about the toxicity, the bullying, the intimidation, the gerrymandering, the bending of the rules, the preferential treatment, etc., etc. I could go on forever about it. And so people would feel intimidated about going to meetings. So I personally used to try and use the momentum group as a sort of almost like a prep school for some people, to give them an opportunity to get to speak, to know what it's like to sort of talk in front of people, and to express themselves in groups. Before they were thrown into the Lansdowne of a CLP meeting or a campaign meeting in Plymouth, it was like, I don't know what to liken it to be perfectly honest. I've never seen anything like it in my life. So it was just bizarre what was going on. So so one of the things I want to touch on with the Shadow CLPs, so we already had this sort of thing going on, and what I did personally in Plymouth Moor View in my CLP was we started to use, or I started to compile a database of people, friends, comrades that I knew from CLP meetings, met socially and stuff, and asked them if it was okay if we keep your email address and let you know what's going on in the party, and just built that up over the years. And we ended up on Southwest Devon, one of our neighbouring CLP, and that's where Jackie Hilton and one or two others, Helen Yu was on this call, are from that CLP, had a similar experiences where we sort of changed things away from being a sort of right-wing dominated CLP to being left-wing dominated. In our case, in Moor View's case, we got ourselves together after almost 4 years of losing everything, whether that was some motion about something or whether it was a delegate to conference or a nomination to a regional board or wherever it might be, council and parliament, to getting ourselves together and actually winning 5 things in a row, like nominations, CLP delegates, leadership nominations, etc., officer roles in the EC, those sort of things. And we started to dominate the CLP, and then COVID came along and sort of pulled the rug under our feet a little bit from that. But the thing that I think that we did in Plymouth, and Carel touched on it strongly, and to me, this is the most important thing for me. It's the morale and the sense of belief. And as a newcomer to the Labour Party, after being in the military in the Royal Navy for several years and not being involved in politics, to me, one of the things that was glaringly obvious to me when I first came into the Labour Party was a tendency for the right wing, and it's kind of in line with the imperialist sort of system really anyway, was to undermine and break your spirit. They were very good at that, the divide and conquer sort of thing. And these people, to me, have always, the Labour Party, the Tories, all those Lib Dems and people like that, always exemplified that to me, that they were just another arm of the British imperialist system. And coming from a country which is the first colony of the imperialist system in the UK, I kind of understood those tactics. So I saw those things being played out in the grassroots sort of CLP and branch situation in the Labour Party. So people were susceptible to that. People would walk away from it. Somebody would do something horrible and people would go, oh, I'm not coming back here anymore. You'll see people come to meetings and then you'd never see them again because of the way they were treated. So the thing that I spent a lot of my time on was trying to keep people's morale up, trying to keep them positive, to make them realize the tactic that was being played against us, and not to succumb to their deviant and treacherous tactics. Make them work for it, you know. Don't just walk away from them because they've pissed us off, for want of a better word, or because we're outraged or whatever. It's our party. We're the members of this party. Thanks, Paul. I see Kevin's here. I'll call Kevin in a moment. So that's what I focused on, and as I said, Carel touched on that. So what we're doing now, the game has changed a bit now, because obviously Corbyn's not here anymore. We've got a right-wing leader. The dynamic has changed dramatically, and people have left the party in the droves now. So as we're hearing from Mike Kennard and from Carel, we're losing membership. So the key is, to me, is to try and sort of stop that, just to stop the bleeding. And where you can't stop the bleeding is to provide that safe home, that safe place that Carel referred to for our socialist friends, whether they're members of the party, outside the party, been expelled, suspended, resigned, whatever it might be, to give them somewhere to accumulate, to gather, to heal, to get themselves back again, to get themselves back into a mental state of belief that we can all stick together, and that eventually we can regroup, organize ourselves, and then we can fight back. I hear a lot coming from especially MPs and people on the Socialist Campaign Group, and people like Ian Lavery and Richard Bergen and those types of people, and they talk about stay and fight, and they do all this sort of chest thumping stuff. You know, we got to stay and fight, and I'm at the screen screaming, but you got to tell people how they're going to fight. Not everybody's capable of it. Not everybody's the same. Different people, different folks, different strokes. If you tell somebody who's beaten and bruised and demoralized beyond repair that they have to stay and fight, that could be the thing that actually kills them off, because they don't know how to. They don't know how to. They need support. To me, that's what solidarity is, and that's what unity is, and that's what comradeship is. And that's the things that I was told when I joined the Labour Party. So I would like to see those things exemplified, and I think that that's the way you do it. You look after the people who are wounded, you look after the people who are hurt, you look after the people who are depressed, you look after victims of abuse. You know, I see politics in this country as like being a victim of abusive relationship. If we know anybody who's been a victim of an abusive relationship, we tend to empathize and want to sympathize and support them. So we need to do that, and then give them the strength so that they do believe there's somewhere to go. You know, they don't have to stay there because there's nowhere else to go. Give them some sense of belief in themselves. And so, as I said, I could probably spend the whole hour and a half for this talking about this sort of stuff, but we've got other things to do. You know, so people outside the party, what we've started to do now, as I said, the goalposts have changed with the Starmer thing, the people leaving the party. So what we're doing now in Plymouth, we're starting to join up with other people doing like the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. Jackie mentioned about a couple of things. I'll get her in a moment to speak about that after Kevin. We got involved with some young people from Socialist Appeal in Plymouth. Young people who don't know anything else other than a Corbyn Labour Party and the surge of socialism on the left. So they haven't got the battle wounds that a lot of us have got here from 20, 30, 40 years and stuff like that.
I think what we have to do is to be realistic about the difficulties we're facing, but we also shouldn't be, I suppose, pessimistic. And that's because what many comrades think of as the Corbyn moment, that period, does show the way that things can change. Now, that was in many ways, it was for me, almost a once in a lifetime opportunity. And, you know, I think the left, particularly the leadership of the official left, squandered that. But we can, I think, gain something from it. Remember that large numbers of people still remain in and around the party, and we can still appeal to them. Many people did back did back Starmer because he claimed that he was not going to alter the manifesto, and he did put forward something of a unity front. So we can hold him to that. So, but I don't think that we should write off Labour. I don't think that we should also write off many of the people who've drifted away. It's quite difficult in the conditions of lockdown to try and bring them back in, but that's, I think, what we should be doing. But we should also be bringing them back in on the basis of developing our politics and of explaining exactly what it is that we are fighting for. People were enthused by Corbynism. People really wanted to get involved. And we've now got to try and rebuild a genuine fighting left in the party. So that's really where I am at the moment. But I think, you know, the Labour in Exile Network and other groups, the Labour Left Alliance, Labour Against the Witch Hunt, so on and so on, have all done a very good job in holding that left together. And we've now got to take that forward. So thanks, comrades.
I'm from Southwest Devon CLP, and we've had a lot of the same problems. I won't go into all of it now because we want to maintain some positivity as well. So I'd like to speak really about what's gone well rather than what's not gone with all the problems we've had. So one of the things that went well was Terry and myself and a couple of other comrades decided that we would like to arrange an event which was open to everyone and with a socialist theme. And the first one that we did, the first activity that we did was actually with Momentum, which was to invite Chris Williamson to bring his Democracy Roadshow to Plymouth. As you can imagine, that went down a storm with the Plymouth right wing and made some of us a target really right away. But we held our nerve, and we 160 people came to that. So that enthused us. So we went on after that without the umbrella of Momentum, just as a group. The first event that we did was a one-man show of a production of The Ragged Trouser Philanthropist. And I actually found myself afterwards talking to some of the people who had attended, thinking they were possibly recruits to Labour at the time when we still had that hope. And I was actually talking to two communists from around Dartmoor way, but it doesn't matter because you're putting on these things and they have a wide audience. So you're encapsulating socialists who you may not have met before. One of the things that was noticeable from everything that we did was that the right wing were absent at everything that we put on. So we were more or less boycotted by the right wing, even though some of the things that we were putting on, such as we put on the NHS, one of the first NHS films from Keep Our NHS Public campaign. And we were very, very fortunate that Dr. Bob Gill and Colin Crilly agreed to travel down to Plymouth and have a little talk after the film and do a question and answer session, and afterwards we had a coffee with them up on Plymouth Hoe, and they were so interesting and enthusing to speak to people like that. So that again went well. That attracted about 70 people, and I believe at the time we recruited about 5 new members from that event. We also arranged for John Rees to come to Plymouth, and he gave a talk about the levelers. But all of those things were really successful events, and it was outside of the Labour Party. We arranged it for all comers. Everyone was welcome. And I think that's part of the way forward, as well as what you was spoken about earlier, which was about getting into the community. And one of the things when we did have control of our CLP was that our original left-wing chair, she organised an event at a local coffee shop, which was to help people and signpost people who were having difficulty with their benefits. And that was quite popular as well. So I think these things are the way forward to show in your community that you're still there and that you're welcoming people and that we are different. Yeah, we're different than them. We haven't got this awful need to put down other people, and that we are welcoming, that we have genuine socialist ideology.
Obviously, I'm from North Thanet CLP, down in the North Kent coast, and I've been expelled from the party in the last couple of months, and I was the chair of North Thanet a couple of years ago. Moving on, there's a couple of things I think we need to do going forward. We need to be involved in our local shadow CLPs, whether we call them socialist Labour or whether we call them shadow CLPs. That's by the by, as far as I'm concerned. The important thing is that we organise such organisations. We keep contact with members locally or former Labour members locally, and build those organisations in our own communities. And one way that we can do that and build on those organisations is by our activity in outside organisations. First of all, obviously the trade union movement, but also with organisations like Keep the NHS Public, and in my own area, Save Our NHS in Kent. And there are groups like Save Our NHS in Kent up and down the country, and get involved in those local groups. There are lots of campaigns around them about privatising the NHS and fighting that, and about protecting services and supporting our NHS workers where they're in dispute with NHS management. As well as that, get involved in the Resist initiative. On the 26th, 27th and 28th of September, there's a Resist event being organised. It's going to happen alongside the Labour Party conference down in Brighton. And you can access that at theresistevent.com. Get along to that. Make your voice heard. That there are people in your local area who share the concerns that have been expressed by comrades here today. And the other point I wanted to make is that part of the reason why the Tory party have controlled Britain for the last decade, and what the reason why we've been on the retreat in the left for the last 40 years has been, in my view, because of the lack of political education for ordinary people across the UK. We are bereft of political education in many walks of life. And I find it most depressing that, although I've worked in many different industries, how I've often found that the only ever is a handful of people in any workplace that actually have a clue about what's really going on. And I'm not trying to be condescending to all the many people I've worked with. It's just the fact that the mass media in this country has let people down on so many occasions, the BBC in particular, and the national press. That political education can be picked up in many places, and I would personally recommend the great work that Kevin Bean and others have been doing in the Labour Left Alliance, providing educational opportunities every Thursday for the last year or so, where you can get a clue into what the history is that we've seen over the last 100 and 150 years, and learn from that history and implement the things that we learn going forward. We've got to link up with local people in local left groups. In my own area, we've got Thanet Left, the other Kent Left, and I'm sure there are left groups in all of the areas across the country. Get involved with those groups, even if it's only on social media. Get involved in those groups and get your voice heard and get other people to get involved. We must build those groups, and we must build the political education of the people across the country if we're to make the changes that the nation needs going forward. And that's it. And it's only with that education and with the opportunity of linking people together that we're so enthused by the Corbyn leadership that we're going to be able to make the changes we need.
The discussion that we've had this evening has shown you can organise through a Facebook group, you can organise through making events, whatever suits your community. But the important thing is that enthusiasm, that determination, that sort of inspiration that we all had for a few years, we keep it going. And I think the thing about the left, which is different from the right, is that we are positive. We're the ones with the ideas. Somebody said about their CLP, I think it was our first speaker, well, they just back to a chat group. And in my CLP, they've got rid of the whole of the left, and Hove has returned to, and I'm not being ageist here because I'm in my 60s, but Hove has returned to a sort of over 55s little cluster of, well, frankly, prejudice, but cosy chats, and they like the MP. No policy, no political debate, no nothing. It's gone. They've expunged it with us. So my view is, in my area, we will keep doing the activities, and we will not let the right wing rest, because we'll be doing the campaigns, we'll be getting letters in the local paper, we'll be doing photo opportunities on the beach or wherever we're protesting, you know, and to maintain that life that it had for several years. And I do find it alarming that you know, the polls are showing that nobody really under 40
with any self-respect at the moment would vote for Labour. And why would they? Because Labour's not offering them anything. And it's for us to keep that pressure on. I think Brian referred to the manifestos. We keep that manifesto in our sites and we don't bemoan, oh, Keir's thrown it all away, which he has. We promote it. You know, we are the ones that have to inspire people that there is something in politics, whichever way we do it, and that'll be a very local thing. Anyway, thanks.
I want to say that I agree with Becky said. It's the manifesto, it's our manifesto, and the Tory copy us. Boris Johnson stole our idea, and it's the most important thing. Well, and I also wanted to add, and we always have, sorry to be a negative, but we on the left we have spies. They always need to know. They always the right knows what we're doing, and the left is not as strong as the right. When I mean the right, the center right or whatever they call themselves. So we need to check on how we can be more united and be strong and make sure that we're more secure. And the people that who let down Labour is the so-called left, and some of them are still here. So that says a lot that the left is not strong. But the one thing that positive is the manifesto, and that's why I stayed in the party, is to fight for that legacy that Jeremy left behind. And that's the most important thing. And I just want to say thank you. I know we don't have time. Thank you, everyone.
I was going to say the important thing here is communication. So obviously, you know, in Stroud, when we started to get people leaving, I set up a Facebook group for our current and ex-members, so at least we can all keep in touch. So that was a start. But what I wanted to mention, because you haven't mentioned it yet, we actually set up a Facebook group for the lean Shadow CLPs. And what I thought would be a good idea would be all these people that have been talking with absolutely wonderful ideas and all the great things they're doing, if they could just post on there, because it would then encourage other people to sort of follow suit.
Obviously, if you're already in a trade union, it's important to get involved in that if you can. And also, if you're not employed or you're self-employed, whether it's disability or whatever, you can actually join something called Unite Community, and I only joined about 2 months ago, and I think it's important to get involved in their activities as well. Yeah, that's all I want to say really.
There's been some great positive messages on here about things we can do, you know, initiatives, etc., etc. As I say, I keep probably repeating it. People in Plymouth are probably tired of hearing me saying these sort of things. Thank you for that link in the chat. But it's to do with the sort of the mentality side of things, the morale side of things, of keeping ourselves positive, looking after your own well-being mentally, and keeping strong in the onslaught of the right wing. These people who, as Becky pointed out, we're the ones who got all the ideas and all the love. They're the ones that have got all the sort of the toxicity and the falling in line. Basically, they just do what they have to do to win. We are the ones that are going around sort of swapping ideas and crying and getting upset and being happy and joyful and all these different things. So I want to sort of come to answering the question. Becky, I think Becky said something about, and people have mentioned about Corbyn. I think Kevin Bean mentioned it, and you know, certainly lots of us have been inspired by the Corbyn thing. One of the things that Corbyn did, which really stuck with me, was when he said, "It's not me they're frightened of, it's you." And that's the thing that's really stuck with me with Corbyn. And it's a thing I keep saying to people, and I've said it all my life, long before politics ever came into my life, when I was in the Royal Navy, when I was managing football teams and stuff like that. The whole group dynamic thing is exactly the same no matter what walk of life you're in. It's, as Bill Shankly used to say, formations can stop you from losing a game, but players help you win a game. Okay? And what he meant by that is that it's individuals. It's up to us now, guys. Jeremy Corbyn wanted to empower us to pick up his inspiration. And I think that we need to move culturally. And this is the reason I joined the Labour Party, not just because of the policies and the ideology, but because of the mentality of Corbyn, because he wanted to empower the grassroots people. He wanted to get away from the let's wait for a savior or a messiah to come across the high. We're all sitting in the doldrums, you know, twiddling our thumbs and thinking life's rubbish, and let's wait for some hero to come over the horizon and save us all. And I think what Corbyn appealed to me was the thing I've been trying to do all my life, which is to help us save ourselves, you know, it's take responsibility ourselves. So how do you form a shadow CLP? What you do is you get a group of like-minded friends, comrades, whether in the Labour Party, outside, wherever they are, and between a group of you, you know, it takes maybe 2, 3, 4 of you, get together and say to each other, right, we are going to do this. We're going to take responsibility for this. Jackie Hilton talked about, you know, organising the events that we did in Plymouth. Other people have talked about community projects. Brian Precious talked about it. John Gibson talked about it. Paul Collins, everybody, Vanda's talked about it. Everybody has talked about it tonight. What it needs is for individuals to say, I'm going to take responsibility for that. I'm not going to wait for somebody else to do it and see what happens, and take the bull by the horns. Organise meetings, go to your CLPs and branches if you're still in the Labour Party. If you're not in the Labour Party, go to your local community projects, go to your local social events, organise local social events, speak to people, engage with them, ask them if it's okay if you take their name and the contact details, and organise events through them. And that's how you build it up. That's how we did it in Plymouth. And it can be a slow process, but there's an old saying, you got to start, you only start at the beginning, you know? So you have to start with a couple of names, a couple of people to take the initiative. Last sort of minute or two, we also were, a lot of us are members of groups like Momentum still and Labour Left Alliance and et cetera, et cetera. Join those groups locally.